We apologize for the technical difficulties there, but apparently something happened with StreamYard and kind of booted us off as we were jumping into the latest episode of Flash. It could have been Wanda. I mean, it could have been Agatha all along.
Agatha all along.
Could have been Agatha.
Or
she's pulling the strings.
Or, as Jason suggested, it's Mojo.
It's Mojo. Look, this is TV related stuff. Maybe Mojo wants us on whatever crazy Harvey Weinstein Mojo network he's going on in space. I don't know, but I say we think about his offer. No offense, Mr. Faraci, but Mojo's got his own planet.
I love the fact that you're still hanging your hat on a Mojo sighting someplace in the MCU. I can't tell you how much that I love that. I can't love it enough.
Right now, eventually he's going to be right.
Yeah, bro, it has to be at this point because someone out there is going to hear it and be like, we have not used Mojo yet, and there's this guy on the internet that's clamoring for him, so let's make him right.
This one guy.
It's one guy. It's it.
Genius, gold, Jerry, gold.
It's gold, Jerry.
It's on a show that's named after a DC reference, but hey, let's use it anyway.
It's a DC reference.
Why this is
a piss in a jar.
And a Marvel background. That's right. Piss in a jar.
So figure that out. All right, so we were up to the Flash season 7, episode 17, which is part 1 of the season 7 finale because they split into 2 parts for whatever reason that is, but. Well, Jason, what did you think of the last 2 episodes? And I honestly think they've stepped it up a notch. I'm kind of in now.
Yeah, I thought they were interesting. I like that. We talked a bit the other day about the one last week, and I like that they finally resolved the Iris stuff. Because again, I'm sitting there going, "You keep telling me she's sick. Like, where the hell is she? Would you fire this actress? What are you gonna do?" But I like that they bring her back. I like that. Deanna's there because it's at least pulling from threads that they used in earlier on in the series or in the season. I thought it was a solid episode. I love that Nora's back. I love that actress who plays Nora. I really enjoyed her season on The Flash. Guy who plays Barry, I think, is kind of annoying, but I think
Bart?
that's the character. Bart, not Barry. I'm sorry. Yeah. Because I think that's the point. He's like, I'm young and cocky and I'm going to do all this stuff. And, I'm sure he'll grow on me. But I thought it was they were solid episodes. And I like that they gave Bart some depth and like that he said that Godspeed was his Thawne. Yeah. And sort of Barry and Iris had to sort of talk and go through what that actually means because of what all of that Thawne took from him. So I thought that was a really good moment. And I'm interested to see where this Godspeed stuff goes. And I think something really interesting that we find out is that these secondary Godspeeds are actually Godspeeds who just want to be free. Because what happens after Godspeed gets Barry's Speed Force is he calls them all back and absorbs them or kills them or whatever to take. He takes their power, he destroys them, and that the second faction of Godspeeds, they're helping Barry, not to help Barry, but because they want to destroy the other Godspeeds and this, what's his face? What's with August?
Yeah.
Is that the guy's name? And they want to kill August because it's the only way that they're going to be able to survive. So I thought that was super interesting, like these clones getting sentiency and wanting to do anything to survive. So I'm kind of in to see where this goes. I think it was not a good season at all, but if it ends strong, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, I can definitely, if you stick the landing in your finale and running down the line like we did with Batwoman. Batwoman saved itself over the last couple episodes, and we're like, all right, for a show we were trashing pretty hard. I mean, it did redeem itself going down the stretch, and the Flash hopefully will do the same. So we get a scene where Bart and Nora are battling Godspeed in the future, and Bart does this thing where he kind of like phases through the Godspeed to kind of take him out. It reminded me very much of like A-Train in The Boys. I don't know, for some reason, kind of just like, right? It kind of got that weird vibe from it.
Yes. Well, because that's the first thing you see in The Boys is like a superhero thing is A-Train running through someone and obliterating her.
Yeah.
And there's a line where he actually says later, I had one of her molars in my mouth. I ran so fast. So absolutely. I could see why that image stuck with you.
Yeah, it very, very much reminded me of that. But then later on at the end of the episode, Barry uses that same technique to take down the Godspeed that, to help free Bart otherwise. Because Bart gets jumped by a bunch of Godspeeds in a church, which the church that's there is going to be something we also see at the end of the episode. Because it turns out in Godspeed's mind, that's where, he's like in a church. He has his own throne there, kind of like he is Godspeed and, the whole thing with the church. So that's there. I know Jason's favorite character, Allegra. We learned that she's losing her powers, and that's now she has like an ultraviolet thing that she's emitting now for whatever reason that is. Please, God, make sure that this is something that's worth, because the storyline is going nowhere. It's going nowhere, just like Joe's story is going. It's just God.
That went nowhere. Like I don't even know what's going. Like, are they setting up that the woman he's helping is not the woman he thinks she is? Because they have that whole thing where they square off against the guy who killed the whole squad, and he's like, "You can't be that woman. I saw her die." So it's like, and then she's being like obviously dodgy about the questions that Joe was asking. So I don't know where that's going, but to be honest, I don't really care. Like, get Joe back in with the Flash. Like, he doesn't need to do his own solo things like this.
Those two storylines better have some kind of payoff next week. I'm going to be pretty pissed off. But actually pretty exciting to see Jay Garrick back.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome. The original actor who had played the Flash on the CBS series back in the early 90s. He's plays Jay Garrick on this show, and then we find out that this Jay Garrick has a relationship as kind of like an uncle to Bart Allen, and in the future, apparently Godspeed kills Jay Garrick, and that's how he's his Thawne, and that's why they have that rivalry, and why he kind of like really sees him as an arch nemesis. So that's there. So then the Godspeeds in this episode, they kidnap Jay Garrick, and Bart thinks it's all going to happen again. So they lure him into a trap, and he knows there's a trap, doesn't care. It was just kind of like my uncle taught me. Sometimes you got to go with your instinct and roll with it, and that's kind of what he loves about him. And then he finds out he gets put into a damn coma by the Godspeeds, and Barry ends up having to avenge him.
This is the Jay Garrick from Crisis, right? The one that appears and helps them out. Okay. Yes. The one who lost his speed. Okay. I didn't remember if he lost his speed at the end of that, because I wasn't that invested in a lot of what was going on in Crisis, which you and I I think I discussed it on the show, actually.
Yeah.
So I just didn't remember, but I do love that actor, and I do love that they continue bringing him back, because that Jay Garrick character is super interesting.
No, I like him a lot, but they also explain in this episode that he got his speed back once the Speed Force was reborn. So they did cover their bases of why he would have it, why the Godspeeds would be after him, trying to drain his speed, because they do drain his speed there, because that's what Godspeeds are all about. They're trying to drain everyone's damn speed, so that's that. What else did I have written down here? If it's variants again. So at the end of it, Jay Garrick has an invention where he puts on him and August, who's the original Godspeed, and he puts them into his mind to try to help him remember who the hell he is and everything like that. And then with the help of Cecile as well, this whole thing goes around. And then the last scene of the episode is Barry walking into that same church, seeing Godspeed on the throne, and it is revealed that August is Godspeed and everything like that. And they're about to square off, you would assume, in the finale. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I think I like what they're shaping up for, and hopefully, I just want those two pointless storylines to go somewhere next week.
Yeah. And it was nice that we had a little party crash with Cisco, right? Like we got
shit,
to see
my
Cisco.
bad. Yeah, that's true. Cisco's back.
Which that was nice, because I miss him. I think, again, one of my favorite characters, and I definitely feel I feel the absence of his presence. It was nice to have him back. We knew he was going to be back in the finale, but I didn't expect him. I expected him back next week, not this week. So it kind of surprised me when he showed up.
Yeah, no, me too. I wasn't expecting to see him back. But it was cool to see, because Vibe shows up, and instead of sending Diggle to go keep on sending Tech to Team Flash, Cisco actually shows up and kicks some ass with them. So that was cool to see. And obviously, he'll be a part of the fight next week, and we'll see how that goes there. All right. So then last CW thing is Superman and Lois, episode 12. So guess who's on? Guess who dropped by to help out Superman and Lois? John Diggle.
Yes.
John Diggle, of course, pops in here. Finally, by the way, though, but his presence and a couple of lines he has confirms to us what we've been kind of wondering: where the hell is Superman and Lois in the CW verse? Fully connected, present day, as we learn. He mentions Oliver. He mentions the whole Green Arrow thing, and then General Lane knows about a lot of this stuff, and he's from Argus, so it's all there. And they did say though that, and I know I mentioned this before, that this is where Diggle's supposed to end up in Metropolis. So we'll see what that happens. But he shows up to bring tech from Argus again.
Of course,
because that's kind of what he does. He just drops off tech to people. It's like, hey, this is why I'm here this week. So that was, I thought that was, whatever.
I think my favorite Diggle reason for being in town was Gotham, where he was just like, I'm just drinking here, playing cards. I don't know, and I saw you, and that.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, whatever. You play cards, I play cards. Let's hang out.
I can't always be delivering tech.
Yeah, I can't deliver tech all the time, but most of the time I deliver tech. He was like the Uber Eats tech guy for Argus. But we find out, because at the end of the last episode, Clark was getting a consciousness put into him by his half brother, and then we find out that they're putting Zod's consciousness into Superman to turn him evil, which I thought was pretty wild. And he fights it all.
I didn't expect that.
No, I didn't. I thought it was just going to be some random Kryptonian, but the fact that they name dropped Zod was pretty cool. Still would have liked to have seen him maybe tell someone to kneel or something like that. We didn't get any of that. But the conflict goes on through a lot of it. The highlight of it is really John Henry Irons showing up, kicking ass with his suit. He's got the hammer going. He helps Clark to go ahead and to fight this thing off and fight off the consciousness, with reminding him about his family and what he's fighting for and everything like that, because Lois asks him to do that. Because General Lane and John Henry Irons are pretty much saying, listen, here's some weapons to take down Clark. You got to do what you got to do by any means necessary to stop him. But Lois asks him to not do that and maybe find another way, and his family also asks him the same way. There's always an alternate way. And at the last second, he has Clark down. He has him beaten, essentially. And he could have killed him, but he decides, no, I'm going to try to give him a chance to fight it back, because you can see that he was fighting back and forth throughout the episode.
Yeah, and I think he's really shaken because Clark is like, do it. Like Clark, John says, and he was right. Clark told Lois to get me. Clark knows what I'm going to do. And I think that's proven there. Clark was willing, and I think that's why Steele kind of stops and says, "No, wait, there's something there," because Clark is willing to die rather than become that monster. He knew exactly what Steele was going to be doing, and he was embracing it. That was his choice, and I think that's what gives Steele that pause. That no, wait, this isn't the Superman that I know from my world. I have to sort of listen to Lois and Jonathan, his son, because he has that nice moment with his son, like, you look like a great dad, but the guy you're about to kill is also a great dad. And so it was a very earned moment there, and I really thought that they took some real good time to write that out and pace that out and let that sort of come organically. It didn't feel forced that Steele was just like, all right, I'm going to let you live. Like, that moment was good.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But then they used the tech to take down, Morgan Edge. So he gets hit with like that missile that John Henry Irons has, and they lock him up. But he's locked up in a kryptonite prison at the end of it. Oh, I knew that was like hanging around the whole. Thank you. That was hanging around most of the episode. So he's locked up at the end of it, and we pretty much know that that's not the last we're going to see of him, because there's going to be some shit that's going to happen. And it establishes that, John Henry Irons now respects Clark and everything like that. He's not all about obsessed with taking him down. And he's so they kind of have their secondary hero, if you want to say, for that show, if they're going to, they're going to continue to use that character. Or, John Diggle is in town and he could be the Green Lantern. we'll see. Because this show that could be the secondary character too. Because all these shows have a secondary hero besides the title. So, yeah, we shall see. All right, it is time. It is Loki time. We're going to put up
time for
the
a glorious
spoiler
purpose,
warning,
gentlemen.
Yes, Jason, that is actually well put. It is time for our glorious purpose. At the bottom of the screen, if you're watching this is your spoiler warning. Okay, we are at the point now. If you have not seen the Loki finale, click it off. Come back, check us out another time. Warning you ahead of time. We are going to spoil the shit out of this. We know it just dropped today. But we do our show on Wednesdays typically, so it is what it is. But let's. We didn't really touch on episode 5 because due to the timing of things. So, episode 5 was really good. I thought it was really excellent. A lot of Easter eggs that we found that we had posted on our Facebook page as well. Yeah, we learned a lot. We learned a lot. I know Jason is chomping at the bit to discuss OG Loki.
I am. I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say about Richard E. Grant as Loki and that characterization as they wrote it. I think that is the most important moment in the entire show, the entire run of this series so far, this season, to understanding who Loki is as a character.
I mean, that's really, really well put. I mean, we get a lot of things in there. I mean, we get Sylvie, because at the end of that, I think it was episode 4, where she was about to, she was demanding answers and stuff like that. So she, Loki wakes up. We show him with the other Lokis, and he goes off with them. They have their discussion, kind of take him back to their home base and everything. And they walk past some interesting items in this.
Yes.
Did they give it a name? Did they give it a name, by the way? Where they were? It was just kind of like where people go to get pruned. No, right? There was no
the Edge of Time.
I think it was
Edge of Time, right?
The Edge of Time, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so they're in the Edge of Time, and they walk past some interesting items. My favorite was the Thanos copter.
Oh, God, I can't. I had to watch this episode twice because I missed it the first time.
How did you miss it? I meant to ask you that. I meant to text you that. How did you miss that?
All right, so because the way I have to watch Loki, because I have to watch it in the afternoon, my son has been sick, and so I had the baby monitor next to my screen, and I was waiting for him to sleep, so I was watching and sort of glancing back and forth, and I must have glanced around when they passed it, because it's a blink and you miss it thing, and I did catch Frog Thor because I was looking at the screen there, but I completely missed the Thanos copter. And Eddie texted, I'm like, I missed it. I was like, all right, now I got to go rewatch it. And I rewatched it last night, and I was like, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, Thanos copter, like you mentioned, Frog Thor, which Chris Hemsworth voiced, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which again, I mentioned before.
Yes.
You'll need a crowbar to separate him from Thor.
Yeah, it really is true. There's also a helmet from Yellow Jacket. That is there.
It's Mjolnir is there.
Yeah, Mjolnir is there. There's also we talked about Avengers Towers in the back. There's also a shield helicarrier that's seen in the back as well. Then what the hell were the other Easter eggs? I'm forgetting a few of them. Damn it, I don't know. I can't remember. We posted a bunch of them on the page. And those are some of the ones that stood out to me. But yeah, that was. Sorry, I just heard my dog barking over there. I was wondering what the hell that was about because Angie's not downstairs. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was pretty much that. Then they go back there. Loki. The Lokis are chatting and everything like that. We see Alligator Loki, who gets a whole lot of screen time. He gets his own pool.
How phenomenal is Alligator Loki?
Alligator Loki.
How phenomenal is Alligator Loki? And how about the fact that they're in a bowling alley?
Yeah. Yes.
In an underground bowling alley.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And then President Loki pops in with his people, and then they go ahead and there's a whole chat there, and then he gets taken out.
Which I love. One of my favorite parts is when the alligator just takes President Loki's hand off. Right, that's President Loki, right? Right. Yeah. When they're fighting and he just takes his hand off and then like Hiddleston sells it. He's like, it was so good. It was so good.
And that whole scene, that scene is fantastic. With all the Lokis trying to backstab one another and everything. And at the moment, like you go through this series, and you're never really sure what Loki is thinking or what he's trying to do or how he's scheming or how he's conniving. The way he has been since he entered into the MCU, and he's standing there. And this was the most telling sign for me in this whole series that he's now a different person. Is that he's fed up. Like you could see, like he's just rolling his eyes, like, oh my God, like this is so annoying. This is so frustrating. But yet, this has been him since he's been a child. The things he's done to Thor, the things that he's done. I mean, he basically kicked off, Thanos's quest to get the stones, and he was, in the midst of all that. And here he is saying, I'm done with this nonsense. And you could see it written on his face. I love that. It was just a quick second, but I love that part of it. It was perfect. It was perfectly done.
Oh, it absolutely was. And I think what's really interesting about that is the only other Loki to have that reaction to the Lokis is the Richard E. Grant Loki.
Yes.
Because he's also like when they come out, he's like, every one of us, we betray everyone who trusts us just for a little bit of power. Oh, the glorious purpose. And I think that's important because what we know about old school Richard E. Grant Loki, it is the MCU Loki right up until Loki's supposed to die when Thanos kills him. Because his event that fractures his timeline is that he does something that it uses an illusion to make Thanos think that he's dead. And then he just sort of pretending to be space debris, just sort of drifts for years, thinking and thinking and thinking. And he finds a planet and he lives there by himself. And what draws him out is he gets lonely and he says, I miss my brother. I wanted to see if anyone missed me. And, that really goes to show that is the reason why in this episode, the finale, which we're going to talk about, Loki's turn as the hero makes complete sense because Loki has it in him, and Richard E. Grant's Loki is what hits home to the audience. Like, because spoilers again, at the end of this episode, Richard E. Grant's Loki sacrifices himself to help our Loki and our Lokis
survive,
right? Plural, survive, and he dies, and what's a Loki do? A Loki survives, but he makes the choice for the greater good to sacrifice himself, and that shows us that Lokis are capable of that. And that's why I think it's the most important insight to Loki's character, because it should, again, this was our Loki up until the variant timeline, and what happens to him is he thinks about it, mellows out, and realizes he was being a shit and just wants his family back,
Yeah, it really, I mean, it's, and this is the Loki that we were hoping that we would get. We were starting to get at the end of Ragnarok and in the beginning of Infinity War, and we thought that, and I'll be honest with you, I was crushed when he was killed in the beginning of Infinity War, because I was like, I love this character so much. As horrible as he has been to Thor, as horrible as he's been to just about everybody, it's a character that I truly love through this, and I was really heartbroken when he died. And to see him now, like in that role of, hey, I'm, my purpose is now doing the right thing. It is glorious. It is glorious purpose for Loki to actually have a purpose, and I absolutely love where this episode went and how it got to where it was, and that whole scene, with him and Sylvie and even with Mobius there. I mean, it was fantastic. It was so well done.
He gives Mobius the hug, right?
The embrace, the him telling him you're my favorite. Like I love it because it was like, it's like Mobius knew, like throughout the whole series, he didn't want to give him anything. He tried to break him down at every single moment to say, you're not the best one, you're not this, you're not that. But to give him that at that moment was just, it was so well done. I really enjoyed that. Of everything that's gone on in the series, and I've really enjoyed this series. I know we haven't got a chance to talk a lot about it, but that 15-minute sequence, getting to that point where they were all there, was just between the alligator, young Loki, old Loki, and Selvey and Mobius was just golden right there. It was perfectly done.
Did you guys notice that young Loki was drinking Ecto Cooler?
I see. Yes, I did notice that. Yes.
That was pretty awesome.
So that
was great.
Just something funny that I noticed.
I thought actually that it was the Ecto Cooler one, which was the Ghostbusters one, but was it really?
Yeah, it was.
It was, yeah. It was the Ecto Cooler I see.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's perfect. That is so great. I thought I saw it.
It's such a cult item that people like remember fondly from their childhood that you can't get anymore. So I like to think that he has a whole unlimited stash of that from when the TVA had to prune the timeline when High C Ecto Cooler didn't go away. You know,
or are they making it? Are they insinuating that they pruned the Ecto Cooler from High C, and that's how it ended up there? That is certainly possible as well.
That's better than mine. That's way better than mine.
That's because we haven't seen it since, so it's definitely possible, I guess. Oh my God,
that's pretty great.
It's the with this whole storyline and everything with the TVA and the pruning and keeping the continuous timeline, it just opens up so many wonderful things, going back and now that they know, now that this obviously the secret is somewhat out. And that they're all going to find out about it because as we find out going with the next episode, but it's just I can't wait for the possibilities that come from this show. And I never thought it was going to be, after we got WandaVision, which was so wonderful, and Falcon Winter Soldier, which was great also. But man, this was some well-written show. It really was. All
right, Reed. So let's get into the finale then. Let's jump into it then.
More
do you have anything from episode 5? Do you have anything for episode 5?
Before we get into it, I don't.
Okay.
I'm good.
I just wanted to ask you a question, Ed. How vindicated do you feel right now that you called everyone? People were fucking with you online about the Mephisto. Alex, who's my nephew, by the way, was messing with you online about Mephisto, making some jokes. But you, my friend, are vindicated. And I have Kang the Conqueror here in action figure form to say, Eddie, because that's what I don't know. That's what he sounds like in my head. You're vindicated.
I will just say that maybe for the remainder of this episode, you can refer to me as He Who Remains. we'll just refer to it as that.
So I got Tanya below me. I got He Who Remains over here. All right, we're good. We're going.
I'm Loki number 5, by the way.
Loki number 5.
That's what my tag says. My tag says Loki number 5.
Boy, did I feel awesome when a certain scene. Which, by the way, it's not going to take too long to get to. Let's get into that so we can. So the Marvel Studio this episode
rather quickly.
Oh no, they're just.
But I love the fact that they just there was no bullshit. Just walk right in and there you go. It was right there. No build up. It was like last week was a build up. Here we are. Let's do it.
Right then and there. And he's most of the episode. But the episode does start off with the Marvel Studios intro with a lot of voices and audio from past movies, and it's as they show each character, they're kind of dropping in a line from each one. And then it strands off to like a visual representation of the timeline that kind of goes around and it shows all of that. And then eventually we'll cut to where we find, and where we left them last was Loki and Sylvie were entering what we find out is the Citadel at the end of time. And they're greeted by Miss Minutes. So there's a lot of, she's been kind of like randomly popping up more recently, but Miss Minutes pops up and she explains that there's an offer from him. And from he who remains.
He who remains.
And as they can be placed, and the offer is that they can be placed back into the timeline together, even though it's a little unnatural and everything like that. The offer is that he can make it work. It'll be safe. It's okay. And it'll be with everything they've ever wanted. And Miss Minutes goes along with Loki. Yes. Remember, you can defeat the Avengers, right? The Battle of New York. That's how you got yourself into this mess, right? So guess what? You would have defeated the Avengers. You can kill Thanos. Shit, you can have the Infinity Gauntlet. Whatever it is that you want. You can rule Asgard as well. That's another thing that's left on the table. And then tell Sylvie, pretty much what you've always wanted is to have like all that crazy shit that you've been jumping around time and all this misery completely wiped away just like that. And they're just kind of not buying it. They just like brush her off like, all right, whatever. We're not going for this. We're going to keep pushing forward. So then they go ahead and the other cut is to Miss Minutes. She is with Renslayer and downloading the files that she was asking for last time. So that's going on. But then all of a sudden she gets a bunch of files that she did not request. Because Renslayer looks at it and is like, hey, this is not what I requested. And she's like, well, he thought it would be more something that'd be a little bit more interesting and a little bit more, helpful to you. Productive.
Yeah, productive. That was it. I think that's an important word because yes. I think they set something up for the next season in what.
Oh, no question. No question.
Yeah. So then Loki and Sylvie enter a room that looks dusty, has a bunch of statues, and Loki's questioning. He wipes it off and he's kind of like, hey, do you think he's even still alive? Like, what the hell's going on here? And then the elevator opens up. And in my mind, it was like vindication. The second you see Jonathan Masters there, you're like, bang! I screamed it out. I yelled at Angie. I was like, it's fucking Kang! Yeah, baby! Woo! So hyped up for that. And I was like, it's not Mephisto this time. Damn it!
But Eddie, I have a question.
Yes.
So what did you have to give Mephisto in your bargain with him that you made to make sure that you were correct at the end of this season? Are you going to be the next Ghost Rider?
That's the $64,000 question right there, pal.
Nowhere near as much as Peter Parker unfortunately had to give up in one more day, which we try to pretend never happened. Because he gave up MJ. Their love never existed. Awful storyline that went God knows where.
They wanted to rewrite him so he was single, right? That was
pretty much. Like broke Peter Parker, reboot him back to then, and that's the bullshit that they came up with. So I'll say not as much. Not as much to it. My penance now is Marvel just barking uncontrollably because there's nobody downstairs with her, so she's just going to be a pain in the butt. Hopefully, I don't know if she can be heard. Hopefully not.
I don't.
But yeah, so pretty much it's He Who Remains, a.k.a. Kang the Conqueror. He introduces himself in the elevator, and as they're talking to us, he's like, hey, come to my office, let's have a chat. They're in the elevator, he's chomping on an apple, and Loki's like, you're just a guy. You're there. And he's like, yeah, flesh and blood. He's like, I hope it didn't disappoint you. Like, I'm just a guy.
What a performance, by the way. That whole scene with the three of them there was fantastic.
That when we get to that, Tony, I actually think that was probably the most important scene in this entire series by far. I mean, it's all laid out there. And it's an awesome scene. Like you're saying, he's awesome. Tom Hiddleston's awesome in the scene as well. It's a really, really...
Selby's awesome. The three of them all together.
They really, really brought it down.
You could read the disgust on her face as she's listening to this whole thing. I mean, it was very, very well done, the whole scene.
So in the elevator, though, they try to attack him. And he's zipping around kind of like he has one of those things they were calling like the time twister before.
The 10 pads.
The 10 pads, yeah. They changed the name there. I think it was like Time Twister at one point. I think Mobius calls it that. And then later on, it's the 10 pad. Then it was kind of like reset, became pruned.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Which is just strange. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was written one way and then written another, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what was going
on. All right, so they pretty much, and then he goes ahead and offers them coffee at the end of it. Tells them, here you go, Loki, 2 ships each. There it is, knowing everything about them. So Mobius goes ahead and we see his return to Renslayer's office. They have a brief conversation, not the main one that they have. But then the next cut is to the Minutemen. They were tracking down B-15, who was in Ohio 2018.
That's
in a school.
Such a cool scene.
Yeah, it was cool.
It's
and then we find out,
cool scene.
Yeah, that they're tracking down Renslayer. And they find Renslayer was a teacher in a school before she was Judge Renslayer, before the whole TVA and all of that shit. And even the Minuteman that's there, he's kind of confused by it, like, what the hell, what is this? How is this possible? And she's like, listen, we got a lot to talk about. A lot of explaining.
And it works out so well because we cut to that after Renslayer tries to call in the Minutemen to take down Mobius, right? When Mobius comes in, and Mobius just like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work out the way you want it to. And then it cuts to it. It's pretty much. What's her name? I forget the woman's name who leads C-15. The Minutemen in there.
C-15.
B-15.
B-15. So she literally, her whole thing was she was leading Minutemen there to show them, look, we're all variants. This isn't Renslayer. This is a variant. And I thought that was such a brilliant way to show us what happened and economical, because this is, again, only a 40-minute episode. There's a lot that goes on in this short period of time, and very economical to show us this is why the Minutemen are no longer around, because they've all seen what the reality is, and it was very well done. Yeah,
I thought so too. I mean, it was a perfect way to lay it out there and to lead, to know that like those conversations are going to be happening obviously quite a bit with the rest of them. So next cut is back to Kang explaining to Loki and Sylvie that he knows all that happened and all that will happen. He mentions a bunch of things they've done, conversations, the gaze that they had on Lamentus one, all of this shit. And they're kind of just like dumbfounded, staring at him like, wow.
Kang is so cool.
Oh, yeah, no, they don't buy it, but they're kind of like wondering how the hell does he know this?
Well, exactly, because they believe it, and you see, and as the scene goes on, that Loki, he believes it, and she doesn't, and it's where and you see Kang is also he knows that she's going to have doubts, that she doesn't trust anybody, and when she's got this in her mind, and this is all that it is, but you could see like through this whole thing, like as I said before, her face it just reeks disgust. And then you see Loki, who's like starting to put it all together. Like, this guy ain't bullshitting us. Like, he's telling us the truth. And this is scary because this, when he walks into the TVA, he says, this is the most powerful. This is the greatest power in the universe. And he realizes that the man who's behind the strings is now sitting in front of him. And you could see it on his face. It's almost concern.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? And we're in trouble now because this guy is way more powerful than I ever expected.
Yeah. And before
as the conversation goes on, you could see him like, he had his doubts about in the beginning. Okay, well, is this the greatest power? What's going on here in the TVA? But when he's having that conversation with Kang, he's realizing, no, this guy isn't a fraud. This guy actually, he walks the walk.
Yep.
And I think that's really key to what happens between him and Sylvie.
Absolutely, because he's sitting there and he's saying to himself, "This is not bullshit. This guy's for real, and this is the problem." So I love that whole scene. The whole basically him pulling the curtain back on the whole thing is very, very well done. Very concise, very understandable, right? And it wasn't too simplistic yet. It was not too complex that you'd have to spend more time on it. It was really, really well done.
And everything you needed to know, you see when he pulls out the transcript of the conversation they're having. And he opens it, and you're reading the conversation as it's happening, and it's like, no, he really knows what's going to happen. He's not bullshitting them at all.
Right.
Yeah, and he even starts putting doubts in each other's minds, like, hey, he's one that cannot be trusted. She's one that doesn't trust anybody, like Tony had alluded to. And then you can start seeing they're starting to question each other then, besides, maybe even questioning him. So then Mobius pleads with Renslayer as they cut back to their conversation about her changing and the removal of people, the free will of people. Like he's pretty much pleading for everything that he's learned. Then he goes and tries to prune her, and she takes him down, and then he's back on the floor, and I thought it was actually
so
a pretty funny scene.
Because he pulls the thing, and she goes, "Even with that, you're not a threat to me." And he goes, "We'll see." And she just floors him very quickly, and he goes, "All right, well, you're right. I'm back on the floor now. Go ahead,
yeah,
do
I'm not
this."
really a threat.
Can I just add that Owen Wilson in the show was fantastic. I mean, adding the humor and the one-liners here and there, but his acting in this show was very, very, very good. It's a guy who's not really known for that. He was really good in this show.
Yeah, he was. He was excellent.
He's so good that I'm watching it, and it's not like when I watch an Owen Wilson movie, I like Owen Wilson a lot, right? But I never forget it's Owen Wilson. I forget this is Owen Wilson because he doesn't look like he normally does. They've aged him up a bit. He's not doing the he's not doing the wow and stuff like that. Like he's just doing a straight performance, and it's a good performance. I agree.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. He plays his part really well. I did not think of the Wedding Crashers or, anything like that with him and any Vince Vaughn movies. I never thought of any of that while watching this show. He to me was not, he was Mobius in this show. He was really, really good.
Yeah, I think there was one scene earlier on where he speaks to Renslayer when she's like in her judge thing and stuff like that, where I remember I did mention that he did remind me of a Wedding Crashers moment where he's kind of like, yeah, you're up there, you're in charge. It seems very appropriate. Like that was the only one scene that made me think of that, but otherwise I agree with you. Like he was very much in character, sold me completely on Mobius. I was, fully invested in him. But then as the scene ends, though, she goes ahead and goes through a time door. And he's like, where are you going? And she's like, in search of free will. Which would lead you to believe, she's going to look for Kang. Because it keeps on mentioning... Because she mentions earlier in the scene that, the only one with free will is the one who created all this, the one who's in charge. So that's why it led me to believe that that's it. That's who she's going to go look for. Because maybe she's not entirely sure who's in charge.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think she even knows who it is. I think she's just in search of, so she'll pop up someplace along the line, either in season 2 or somewhere else along the line. But I think we definitely haven't seen the last of her.
No, not at all.
And I agree that I don't think she knows who it is because everything we've seen in her characters since she learned that the Time Lords or whatever aren't real, that they were just animatronic. It's always been, I need to know what's going on. We need to keep the mission because we don't know why the mission was put into effect. It might be a good mission. We don't know. So and that's kind of why I like her as kind of like a pseudo villain because she's kind of a pseudo villain, right? Like, because she opposes, because she's not in the wrong. She doesn't know what's going on. Maybe this is the right thing to do, and it's what she knows. And I think there's such a great scene before we move on from it. That second conversation, that last conversation she has with Mobius, where Mobius is like, you betrayed me, our friendship. And she went, what are you talking about? You betrayed me. I stuck my neck out for you. I worked to help you get farther here. I got you promoted. And then you sided with 2 Lokis who came along. And I thought that was a really compelling argument because through her perspective, I see that. Like, absolutely, they were friends. And then he stole her phone and sided with the Lokis. So, yeah, they both, for whatever reason, whoever's right or wrong, they both kind of did betray each other.
Oh, there's no question, and she did too because she did. She's saying that they did, that C-20 was enchanted and that that Loki that Sylvie killed her, but they killed her. They must have pruned her at some point or sent her wherever, but that was and he realized that she lied to him. So yes, she definitely betrayed first, but she was doing it because she thought she was protecting the timekeepers and she was protecting the TVA, right. Whereas Mobius was having his eyes open. But it reminds me a lot of going back to the story of Captain America and going back to how he, when the same thing, when the curtain was pulled back on Shield and he realized that Shield wasn't what he thought it was, he became disenchanted and so on and so forth, but then sought the information to figure out exactly what it was, and then he brought it down. It seems that this is kind of the same thing that's going on here with Renfrew. She's searching, and she wants the actual truth, but she's not giving up the mission until she knows something's not right, but she's not giving up on it until she knows for sure, and she has all the facts, which is pretty much what Steve Rogers did.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good call.
Parallel.
Yeah. So then we get the big scene, where what we referenced before, which a lot of the three of us have felt is probably it's definitely the most important scene in the entire series, where Kang explains to Loki and Sylvie everything about who he is. We kind of get, you want to say it's an exposition dump or whatever it is, it's fine, but we get the background on Kang, at least through his perspective. And pretty much explains to them that there are many variants of him, most of whom were scientists, and they all learned of the existence of each other in different timelines. At first, they lived in harmony. Everything was okay. They were trying to better each other and stuff like that. And then there were others who he puts it as they were not so good at heart. That's in there. And then they wanted to conquer. They were like, oh, there's other places to take over. Let's go ahead and let's try to invade them. Let's take them over. Let's conquer it. And that is where that's where we get the timeline war, like the multiverse war that was going on, that we heard about in the TVA video in the first episode. So that part wasn't bullshit. That was the truth. Now, how it started, obviously they weren't going to explain how that whole thing was going on, but we find out that at least he's telling us that the time the multiverse war was actually a thing. But each of the Kangs, because we didn't actually say the name in this, but we obviously know who he is. The Kangs are defending their own timelines. They're fighting it.
What he does say is, I've been called a lot of things, sometimes a conqueror, and then a couple of other things. And then, when we see what we see at the end, we'll touch on how it cements who he is.
Yeah, he says he's been referred to as a ruler. And the way he emphasizes a conqueror, that's when you're kind of like, he's really spelling it out if you didn't quite get it at this point. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, and I've been called a jerk also. Like, if you want to throw that in there as well, which I thought was actually really funny. But he then, he goes ahead and he ended their timelines. He ended up harnessing the power of the beast that we saw in the last episode. That was the big, like, cloud-like creature that they dealt with. That what they referring to as like the dog that was protecting this and like the guard or the protector of this whole thing. He ended up harnessing the power of it and used that to end the other timelines and to make sure that there was only one. Because, again, to stop the war that was going on and everything that was there. In his mind, he's another one who's thinking he's the hero, and it's kind of like similar to what we saw with Thanos as well and a couple other villains in the MCU, that he feels like his, the ends
justifies the means. Right.
Exactly. And he goes ahead and he explains that, that's why the TVA works. We put the TVA out there for bureaucracy and everything like that to make sure that, this is what happens. We maintain the same timeline so none of this ever happens again. So there's no other variants that start popping up. Jason, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, it's going to, I think what's really important too is he, unlike Thanos and unlike other villains, he admits he's a villain. Like he says it. Like, I'm a villain, you're a villain. We're all villains here. And what I like about what he says is he's like, I'm paraphrasing poorly, but he's like, this isn't ideal, but this is the best there is, because if I don't do this, things get worse.
Yes.
And I think that's really interesting, and it leads to a philosophical question I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, at the end of this review. But I think as a villain, that's a really powerful, like, look, I'm not the good guy, but I'm also not the ultimate bad guy either. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, it is, because it's as you said, it's very much like Thanos. It's very much like Thanos, and just like Steve Rogers said in Endgame, he's not wrong. When when they were talking to Tony, and he was saying we can make things worse, we could screw this up even worse than it already is, and he said to him, he said to them when they were walking back to the car, he's not wrong. Listening to what Kang was saying, he wasn't wrong. Is this the best way of doing things? No. but it was the only way to do it without having an interstellar or interdimensional or inter-multiverse war, which was what was going on before. So he trimmed all of that off the first time, and in order to keep the peace, in order to keep the order of everything, that's the way that they put everything in order. So technically, what he was saying, how he was describing it was so beautiful, because he was saying is like, look, you can keep the devil that you have, or you could pop it up to open to, hundreds of devils that you don't know, and you don't know what they're going to do. That could definitely be much worse than what I am. And I'm saying to myself, this is a legitimate dilemma, especially for people who are a little unscrupulous, which is exactly what they wanted at that point, where they were going with this. Mm-hmm. But you're looking at somebody Sylvie, who was there because she was there strictly out of revenge. And then you have, the schemester and Loki, who basically, as we said before, kicked off the whole Infinity Gauntlet search, with what happened in the original Avengers movie. So to have the two of them there, at some point you would never think, you always think that Loki would turn on a dime like this. It's just when you think he's on the right, or he's doing the right thing, he veers off, and he's going to go back to being the same guy he's always been. And this must have been a tempting offer to be, for somebody who seeks power. This is the ultimate power in the universe.
Yeah.
And he was like, nah, man, I'm not interested in that at all. I just want to be, and he was basically telling her, I just want to be with you. I just want to, I want to, figure something out, be on the timeline somewhere with you. And I was just blown away by how well that was done.
Yeah, and so Kang pretty much tells him, hey, I'm really old. I'm older than I appear, and makes them the offer then. Hey, you got option A, right, where you can go ahead, you can kill me, but there's going to be a bunch of not-so-friendly variants of me that are going to pop up, and you're really going to have the whole multiversal war restart again. Timelines will start branching, and then you're going to really see the shit hit the fan, right? Or option B is you guys run it. It's a young person's game. I'm kind of Roger Murtaugh's it, and it's I'm too old for this shit. Essentially, I was just
he Roger Murtaugh the shit out of that.
Yeah, he did. He was just hey, here it is. You guys can go ahead and run it from this point forward, and do what you want. But then they reach a moment in time where Kang admits, I don't know what's going to happen right now. We've reached that moment where I don't know what happens.
Great scene.
Yeah, and you can see the concern.
Scene. And just look at his face. It's this is it. I don't know what's happening after this. This is all.
It wasn't just concern. It was kind of also excitement. It kind of reminded me a little of Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, at the end when Dr. Manhattan can't see the future for a little bit, and he's kind of excited, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's what it struck me as, because he's oh, and now we've just passed the point about 6-7 seconds ago where I don't know what's going to happen. I fibbed to you before, and even that's actually a pretty direct quote. The diction that he's using and the way he speaks, it's such interesting choices, and also something important to point out for another way he is like Thanos is he is not seeking power. He tries to give power away. For him, much like Thanos, it's about the work. It's about the greater good, because what happens to Kang? Well, what we see is he's stuck alone at the end of time, pulling strings all by himself with nothing to do except for talk to the cartoon, clock, the Miss Minutes. So it's he also he doesn't get a great shake. I mean, yes, his grandmaster plan was done, but he's not really happy about it. There's nothing for him. So again, it's an interesting villain where his villainy is for the greater good. So I just also want to point that out before I forgot.
Yeah, no, it's the villainy has a purpose. That's it. It's basically there's an idea that one is obsessed with, and will go to whatever lengths that they have to in order to enact that. And that's exactly what Kang has done. The difference between Thanos and Kang is that Kang has been able to do it and enact it, whereas Thanos was, he was in search of it for all these years based upon what had happened to him on Titan. So, I mean, it is literally a parallel type of villain, And it's a villain you have to respect, because when you watching Infinity War, you're empathetic of Thanos during that movie, because you understand why it is he's a lunatic, but you understand the reasoning behind it. And with Kang, it's exactly the same thing. After hearing that story, you're like, man, this is not the easy thing to do, but this dude did what he had to do. And, and things are the way that they are right now because of what he's done. But all shit is about to, and that's what Loki realizes as one thing is like, listen, we got to think about this, because if we kill this guy, we are opening the door to God only knows what, to the unknown. And at least with this guy here, we know, things have been somewhat in control to this point.
Yeah, and as they're having this conversation, though, the timelines are branching. And he explains that to them, like, we need to get this going, because they show it. Shit's starting to already hit the fan now, so you guys have got to make a decision. But like Tony was saying, Loki's buying this. Loki's completely invested. He's all in. He's believing everything that Kang's saying. He's hanging on every word. Sylvie's just kind of like, yeah, okay, sure, bullshit.
She's got that look on her face like, I'm going to fucking kill you, bro.
I'm going to gut you like a pig.
As soon as you're done talking, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fucking kill you. That's the look she's got on her face. Is written all over her face. And you have that look of horror on Loki's face. He's like, oh, man, this is not good.
Because he's realizing exactly the spectrum of what they've gotten themselves into, because this is villainy. I'm not going to say villainy, because like I'm going to argue Kang's not the villain here. I'm just saying I don't think he's wrong, and then we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is a level of commitment to the mission that Loki himself has never felt, and he sees the dedication in this guy, and it scares him because he knows he's right. And I think that's the important part. It's like, no, we have to take this seriously. We have to listen to it. And he even says, I'm not asking you not to kill him. I'm asking you to stop and think about it for a minute.
Think about it, right? And, remember, like, Loki is the guy who is just the one who craves power but doesn't want to do anything with it. He just wants the power. He wants the title of king but doesn't want to do shit about it. And that's what happened when he sent Odin away, and he was basically ruling Asgard as Odin, but he was sitting, as Thor said, sitting in your bathrobe in the middle of the afternoon, eating grapes and watching a play. Like, this is not what a king does. This is not how you rule. You're supposed to rule, with your people's best interest in mind, not, just sitting around and being, comfortable. And that's the thing. Like, he's realizing the spectrum of all this, and the fact of someone like Loki, who all he wanted ever was to be in power, to be offered the most powerful position in the universe, and for him to realize the maturity. Because, look, every character, as we've talked about, has that arc that comes to, hey, something happens to him, they become somebody else. This would have been Loki from 2 movies ago. That would have been, he would have jumped all over that, and, and the universe probably would have ended. But this is him realizing, like, I am not equipped for this. I don't want this shit. I don't want this responsibility. And we need to figure this out, like, immediately, because, this is not good. So, beautifully done.
Yeah, so as they're contemplating what to do with Kang, there's pretty much a back and forth, and this is the scene that Alex wants to refer to here. We get Loki versus Sylvie in a fight right there, because there's a distrust suddenly between the two that is thrown into there, and they kind of openly admit both of it. Like, she starts to wonder, wait a second, was this your whole thing? Did you want did you want this whole thing? Is this whole plan hatched by you? And he, like, sarcastically says, oh, yeah, that's what it was. I'm the one not to be trusted and everything. But eventually flips it around and is like, no, that he just wants to, take the minute and take the time to go ahead and to get this right. And he just tells her, like, after the fight that's there, because it is a pretty good fight, by the way, that's there. I don't want to make it sound like we're glossing over it. But the big moment is at the end of it, where he just says he just wants her to be okay. And then they finally kiss. You almost get into this point where it's like, will they, won't they shit that we've been going through. And then bang, they finally do it. But she fucking kicks him through a time door then. And was like, you want to know something? Like, that's not the same thing. We're not the same in that sense. And he's back at the TVA. She kicks him into the TVA and then turns around. And she fucking stabs Kang and kills him. And then he
what I love
the line. I love the line that she says right before she kicks him through the door. I'm not you.
Yeah, well, that's what. Yeah. So yeah, pretty much. I'm not you. And then boom, kick through the door. He's in the TVA. She goes ahead, stabs Kang. And my favorite Kang moment out of all the great moments that he did give was while he's dying, he gives a wink, and you can tell he's like jubilee about this.
Yeah, and he's like,
"See you soon.
Later. See you later."
Yep.
Like, I warned you this was going to happen, and you thought this was total bullshit the whole time.
Can you please put Tim's comment up there, because I need to. That is hysterical.
Tim has hijacked our other show.
Wang the Conqueror. I'm here. I'm here to fix the timeline. Zip.
Actually, a more appropriate name would be Wang the Conqueror.
Yes, that is true.
Yes, sir.
So then we go ahead and we see timelines.
Whoever thought we'd be talking about that?
Nope.
That's a timeline branch right there, my friend.
Oh yes, that's what he refers to as timeline branching.
Oh my god.
So then the deed is done. Kang is dead. We know that the shit's about to hit the fan. They cut back to Loki at the TVA, and he's found looking hurt and destroyed. Like Tom Hiddleston in that moment is really deep into it. And he is all hitting him right now. Number one, she's like, she just fucking did what she did, kicked him through the door, and that the shit's about to hit the fan. He runs past a bunch of Minutemen. It looks like the TVA is on like red alert. Time branching is going off.
I knew that there was a problem when that happened, by the way.
What do you mean?
Right when that happened, when he ran past those Minutemen.
Yeah, and they were being deployed, and it was like all the shit was going on. You're like, oh boy.
No, at that point, because they just ran right past him.
Yeah, because he was like nothing.
Yeah, because they had no idea who he was.
Yeah, and then he's going ahead, and then he's running. He eventually goes ahead and runs into Mobius and B-15, who are looking at it, and they're watching on their little like device there. That it's going past the Nexus events. Things are going ahead and launching all over the place. Their multiverse is being reborn. And, they're like, well, what should we do? And they're like, I mean, should we do anything about this? Should we not do anything about this? Like,
well, what they say is, does he want us to fix this?
Oh, yeah, does he want us to fix this? Yeah.
Yeah. So they refer to a he, and that, for me, that was when I went, who the hell are they talking about? And then the reveal. So I won't take that from you, Ed.
Yeah, no, yes, definitely. So Loki goes ahead and he talks to Mobius, and Mobius is like, well, you're an analyst. What is it? Not knowing he's Loki at all, does not even comment on it. So you can kind of tell like that's all been pretty much wiped at this point. And then Loki turns around and sees a statue of fucking Kang in his comics accurate suit. Yeah, it doesn't have like the helmet on, but everything else is comics accurate, and that's the statue that's there, and that's pretty much where the episode ends. But then the mid-credit scene, not really a scene, more of just a stamp of the TVA saying, Loki will return in season 2, which at a lot of the end of the Marvel movies, it'll be like Captain America will return and blah 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 or whatever else. So that was their version of doing that. Kind of interesting that I thought that there was that we didn't get a post-credit scene in episodes 5 or 6. There was just
I agree.
Really the one in episode 4, which I thought was kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean, I like when they put the mid-credit scenes or the end credit scenes, and I understand them not doing it so much in the shows, only when they're trying to leave you like really on a cliffhanger. And this storyline is obviously going to get picked up in Spider-Man, which is where it's going to continue, because Shang-Chi, I think, is going to be something that happens maybe simultaneous to this or pre to what this is. Eternals is going to be a story that happened before, and then Spider-Man is going to be the first MCU movie that we get that it's going to be, I think, in present time. And I I think that's going to have a lot to do with why, this is going to lead into that, and then obviously lead right into Doctor Strange come March. So, this multiverse thing, we thought was going to be a 3-movie story arc. No, this is going to be, we are heading head first into Secret Wars at this point, and it is going to be glorious to see, how they portray this over the course of the next 5 years, because, oh my God, they have set it up beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost hopefully lock it in right now that the next Avengers will be called Avengers Secret Wars.
Oh, they've
set it all up at this point. Since the multiverse is reborn, it's acknowledged. And there was an article that was dropped. I didn't share it on our page because I felt it was spoilery. So maybe we'll post it after after we're finished wrapping up tonight. Is Hollywood Reporter did reveal that they pretty much, their article says that Loki is essentially confirmed to be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness now.
Awesome.
I would
think that at this point he's going to be, a point. Look, I'm very, very happy with that. I'm very happy with that because I told, as we talked about, I think before we came out in the air, I was crushed when Loki was killed in Infinity War, because I felt like, he was so, even though he was such a horrible villain, and all the things that he's done, and how many times, and I love Thor, and the fact that he's just continually torturing Thor throughout all of these movies, and I was crushed to see him because I love him as a character, and now that we're going to get more of him, and it seems like we're going to get a lot more of him, I could not be happier. I love Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, no, he's great, and I mean, and it's a different Loki. It's not the same Loki that we've seen in Ragnarok and in the Dark World and stuff like that. They're making that pretty clear that this is a changed man to an extent. Yep. I mean, there will be certain likenesses. I don't think he's going to be completely 100% changed. He'll still do some things time to time. But for the most part, yeah, this dude is on a mission. He's seen completely different shit now. So his whole life experience is totally different than what we've experienced with him.
Yeah,
essentially.
And we started to see that turn in Infinity War, in that death scene when he was killed. When he said "Son of Odin."
Yeah.
It was him acknowledging the fact that Odin was his father. And that was a thing where for many movies he would say that's not my father. As soon as he realized that he wasn't who he thought he was, that was Odin was dead to him. So the fact that was for me was part of the turn. But I really find it very interesting that the Infinity Saga and now the Secret Wars are both kicked off by the same guy.
Yeah.
in Loki. he has been directly involved, well, a variant of him, but yes. he has effectively been involved in both of these, as they called it, Nexus events. Yeah. And I mean, once again, this is going to be a lot of fun, bro. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to dive into this. And you're right. It pretty much, essentially what happened was I guess if you want to say, they've confirmed the rumors of Spider-Man No Way Home, that now we can really believe them. Like, holy shit, the multiverse literally exists. It's all there. This is all really 100% possible now.
Oh yeah, and bro, and I mean that was look. We thought for sure that they were going to introduce the multiverse. They alluded to it in Far From Home. Mm-hmm. We thought that they were gonna somehow, it was going to come from Wanda in WandaVision. We found out that wasn't the case. Yeah. Especially knowing that she was going to be in the new Doctor Strange movie. That was another brilliant misdirect by Mr. Feige. But here they are in Loki, that they introduced the multiverse, and it's just. It could not have been done any better than he did it. I mean, they really, the whole thing, the introduction, the seeing the different, like as soon as you see, the different variant, when I talk about variants and I talk about this and that, and so you're like, okay, well, there was a multiverse, but now there's not. Mm-hmm. Is it there? But we just don't know about it. But to see this whole thing, how it's now created, yeah, right. Literally in front of us, and he got dropped off in the middle of it, because now he is in another, as part of the multiverse, is in another universe in the TVA with people, and he knows this shit, and they don't know nothing. So it's so, oh man, I absolutely loved the series. I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
All right, well, that leads to the thing where I kind of wanted to go with this. I'm hoping Jason can pop back in for this question. Out of the Disney Plus series, where would you rank Loki as a whole, the series?
It's tough. I loved WandaVision so much. I mean, we spent weeks talking about it. It was anticipated. I mean, bro, we would be fucking talking in the middle of the afternoon, after watching it, in the morning or whatever the case is. I mean, I loved WandaVision, but Loki was so good. And it sets up, WandaVision set up obviously with the Darkhold and and Billy and Tommy and White Vision, and it set up a lot. But Loki is just sets up, it sets up the entire phase 4 and 5 essentially, and god damn it, like Marvel setting all of this up and introducing a multiverse in a Disney Plus show is just so fucking ballsy. It's really, I mean, if you think about it, it's so ballsy. Like you would think you would do that in a Spider-Man or, like a blockbuster $1 billion project like that. No, let's do it on a fucking Disney Plus show. Fuck it. People will watch it. Well, home run. I mean, they did it and they pulled it off perfectly. So I give them a lot of credit, man. I mean, they just keep doing things that blow my mind, and this was another one. I mean, the guy is a genius. There's no question. The guy's a genius.
So, Jason, I was just asking. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was asking Tony the question quick, and I know we had this conversation after we saw Black Widow the other day. Now that we've seen it, now that we've seen how this first season of Loki ends, is this your favorite of the Marvel Studios Disney Plus shows?
It is, and I'll tell you why. It's hard because I thought WandaVision's brilliant, and what ekes this out is I love to see Loki as the main character because like Tony, I love the character of Loki. I love Tom Hiddleston as Loki. I think he is the best part of those first 2 Thor movies, which I think I've made it clear I'm not the biggest fan of. Like, they're fine, but I don't love them. I think he has some of the best character growth in the MCU because he starts as a staunch villain and becomes complicated and ends up as a hero. He dies a hero, in my opinion. So
absolutely.
To see this play out with him and to see this variant, this sort of, and it kind of, they hit on what this show is doing in the last episode, in episode 5, when Kid Thor says, every Loki is like this, and every time we try to better ourselves, the Time Bureau snips us and puts us here. And I think that's what this is. This is this character that was very complex in the MCU, really coming into his own as a hero and understanding that he can be better despite being a Loki. And all of that, plus it's alternate universes and time travel and stuff, which is just my thing. Like, literally, if you put time travel in anything, I will watch it. So I think that it makes it my favorite. Is it better than WandaVision? I don't know. I think they're both equally as good in what they do. I think they're both very unique takes with characters that were underserved a lot. And if someone said, no, WandaVision's my favorite, I'd be like, yeah, I get that. But yeah, for me, I think this is my favorite because I think it stuck the landing. I was so happy with the way this ended. I was like, I want more. I heard we were getting season 2, I was like, thankfully, because I was going to text you guys, wait, we are getting season 2, right?
Yeah, right.
I also one last thing. I know I kind of danced around the question, but yes, Loki would be number 1 for me. WandaVision, a very, very close number 2. But the other, the flip side of this whole thing is that my thought literally just ran right out of my head. I would definitely put Loki 1, WandaVision a very, very, very close second. That's what I was going to say. Very extremely close, but the one knock against Marvel films, I would say, for the first 18 or 19 films, until we got to Thanos, was that the villain was always very weak, right? It was always a very weak villain. It was always that, the hero had to outshine the villain, in every single film. And I feel like in these last two Disney Plus shows, in WandaVision and Loki, the villain has been phenomenal. Agatha Harkness was unbelievable in WandaVision, and Kang, like you had little villains here and there, with, throughout the show, but that episode with Kang was just flat out brilliant. And I mean, this is just they're taking this to the next level with how they've done this, the way that they've released these shows and how great that they've been. And look, they got Emmy nominations to prove it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, all three of the two of the MCU shows, because Loki was obviously still too new for this at the time. But WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier both got nominated unbelievably. I love Don Cheadle's quote, by the way, because he was thrown in the mix there. He goes, "I don't understand it. I was in it for 2 minutes. Whatever. Okay, sure."
He got nominated for an Emmy?
Yeah, or as part of like an ensemble or something like that. It was something wacky that didn't make any sense. That it was just kind of odd. I guess it might be a hot take then right here, because I really enjoyed Loki. I liked it a lot. The last two episodes really were bonkers for me, and it elevated it even more. My favorite is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's my favorite of the three. Yeah, no, that is my favorite of the three. Maybe it's because it has, with Captain America: The Winter Soldier is one of my favorite MCU films, and I kind of felt like it had that flavor to it. I did love the fact that we got Sam Wilson's journey to Captain America, so I really enjoyed that. And it's not a knock against it. And I was really thinking about this, and it's kind of tough because, but I enjoyed it. I was telling Jason this just the other day. What I really enjoyed about WandaVision was, I mean, everything about it. But then every week I was trying to guess, and it was like a mystery and something to completely unwrap. Yeah, the slow burn that turned some people off. On the other hand, had us on the edge of our seats because the appetite was so wet at that point to get more information and to try to unravel the mystery. It had you going kind of crazy every week. Mm-hmm. Falcon and Winter Soldier took a different approach to it. Wasn't as much like super mystery behind it, but it brought a different flavor to it completely. But I was still like, yearning to go ahead and watch it every week. But there wasn't as many Easter eggs and things like that to it. Where WandaVision, it was almost like
a weekly thing.
A weekly thing where you had to, that those games where you look at the picture and you got to like find the things that are different. Yeah. That's what that show felt like a lot. And then with Loki, I liked a lot of the stuff. I had more of the mystery that reminded me of WandaVision, where it was kind of like, oh shit, we have to figure this out. We have to figure this out. What the hell is here? Mephisto again. And meanwhile, some of us were Kang, it's Kang.
I'll be honest with you. I never thought Mephisto. I never did.
No, I'm joking. I was not.
Yeah, like
really
I'm just because again, I wasn't involved in the in the first four conversations about the show, but I never thought that was one that just never popped into my head. So
no, we joked about it because in the first episode they had the thing with the horns and stuff, and we made jokes about it. No, we didn't actually think it was Mephisto.
But to be clear,
it's Kang.
I always thought it was Mojo. To be clear, from the first second it started, I was on the Mojo train. I'm
still hanging on hat there, buddy.
Weren't you on the Mojo train? But weren't you on the Mojo train with Falcon and Winter Soldier as well?
I was actually. I thought Mojo was going to be the power broker.
This is episode 24. We said this is 24. So this is now 20 episodes that we have mentioned Mojo at least once, because I think it was in episode 4 where we started the Mojo train, and Jason has been on it ever since. And God love him, because I love the fact that he just will not put it down. I love it. It makes it. I wait for the Mojo reference for every week at this point.
Oh, it's gonna come. I think I have referenced Mojo more than any other person in the world. I think so.
History.
As the character in history.
Even the characters in the story of Mojo, I don't think have mentioned Mojo as much as you have.
I made a Mojo joke on our Granny's PG. I think Alex, my nephew, he was like, who's Mojo? And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
see, this is why it works, because people don't even know who this loser character is. But you know what? We're gonna get him. He's gonna show up. I promise you. Maybe
can I tell you? I looked
maybe
him
we'll
up
get some
in
Mojo in What If.
I looked him up in
Yes.
my Marvel encyclopedia. I want you to know.
Did you?
Yes, I did. Are you kidding me? I did it 22 episodes ago. I did it, bro.
Dude, Mojo was in the X-Men 2 Genesis game.
That's
Oh,
how I
God,
know who
we
he
do.
is. He is
Yes.
he is the hardest villain. He's the hardest villain to beat, because the way you beat
In
that
the ass.
Mojo is you hit reset. Like, that's how you do it. Like, you get to Mojo, and Mojo's he's the second to last guy before Magneto, and I was never able to get to the last stage without using the Game Genie. And the reason is because you're supposed to hit reset after beating Mojo and you wake up in the new level. But if you're a kid playing any video game, you don't hit reset when you're about to get to the end level. That's madness.
Right. Nope.
Oh, that's great.
Never. Especially when you're trying to try to beat a guy that you can't beat.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think that's why I remember Mojo so well, because I was like, man, that is the second worst video game character ever, in my opinion.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. But yes, I broke out the encyclopedia for that. I broke out the Marvel encyclopedia, which is now packed away in a box, obviously. But I have a DC and a Marvel. I bought them for my son, so whenever I used to go through the book, so you could learn all these different crazy characters. Which, you know, like, look, he's gonna, if he reads comics, he's gonna do it as he gets old. He's only 9, so I started him early with, okay, this is what this character looks like. This is what this one does, and we would go through and read it as time goes on. And he's got a Marvel poster in his room that's like this big. It's got like everyone and every character, and he could point out, oh, that's Kang, that's this, thanks that, and it's like, okay, dude, you're on the right track. So, but that encyclopedia, if you got kids, that's definitely the thing to buy, because it's very helpful learning so much about, you know, what's already passed.
I'll tell you something. As a kid, I used to collect the Marvel Universe, which was just, you know,
cards,
just
yeah.
different characters. Yeah, there were the cards, and then there were comic books. There was even a comic book series about dead Marvel Universe characters. And there, when I was a kid in the 90s, there were also these like sort of binder inserts that you got with like pictures of the characters. So that actually, honestly, that's how I know a lot of these obscure characters, because I used to collect those. And so that's how I know about Arcade and Mojo and Major
Arcade.
Domo, who's Mojo's like Mojo's manservant. And like, yeah, there are so many Slug. Do you guys know who Slug is? He's a Daredevil villain. He's like literally like a 2,000-pound guy. He's so big. He's just on a moving like couch, and he's like a crime boss. I don't know when they use it. It does actually sound like it sounds like a less attractive MODOK. MODOK at least gets good head. You know what I mean?
I'm pretty sure Rick knows who Slug is. I can almost guarantee that.
No.
I'm sure he does.
There's no character that I can pull out that Rick doesn't know. Rick pulls out characters that I don't know. That's how it works. I say Sleepwalker, and Rick pulls out someone who was in a half a comic back in 1967, and that's Rick's favorite comic. And you know what? I respect that.
You have to.
I really wish I would have took pictures with my phone of the collection that I got to help him move into boxes. It was pretty glorious.
That's Rick's glorious purpose.
Yes,
collecting comics,
obscure comic books. Yes, no, trust me. Tons of Nightcrawler miniseries, West Coast Avengers, Daredevil, God knows what. I mean, who the hell knows?
It's awesome.
All right, so I am excited to do our first MCU.
Before we move on, I do have one question, and I meant to ask it, but then I got kicked off. That's okay. Is Kang really wrong here? Like, what would you do if you were Kang and you knew that other variants of you from other timelines will be evil and brilliant and try to destroy your timeline? Is he really wrong in what he does? Is he really the villain here?
Well, it's funny, right? I think right as you were getting cut off, Ed and I had this exact conversation, and I said at some point, I said, because Steve Rogers said when they went to when Steve and and Natasha go to visit Tony and to give him the idea that, hey, we can go back in time and get the stones ourselves and bring everybody back. He says to them, he says, listen, we could screw this up even worse than it already has. I can't afford to make another mistake. We made one mistake already. This is the reality we're living in. This is what we got to deal with. And Steve, she says to him, she says, he's scared. And Steve looks at her and says, he's not wrong. And it's exactly what I thought of when I was listening to what Kang was saying, because, like, yes, is it the right thing to do? Is it the most, is it the, the nicest thing to do? No, but life is not built upon being nice all the time. Sometimes you have to, do what needs to be done. And that's what he has done to this point, because if he doesn't, things could be a hell of a lot worse. And that's what he's trying to get across to them. Like, hey, is it great? Did I screw up your life because of it? Yes, I did, but I did it for the greater good. And that's what he was trying to describe. So yeah, you're absolutely right. He really isn't wrong. Could he work on something else? Yes. Could he have improved something? Maybe, but he's definitely not wrong.
Because for Thanos, Thanos, there's always the conversation like, well, maybe you could snap and have double the resources, right? And we can conceive other things Thanos could have done, whether it would have been successful or not. But in Kang's place, what's the move if not because you can't conceivably just prune the timelines that are going to have evil Kangs. You don't know. You can't do that. It's an all or nothing thing. You either let the war happen or you prune all the timelines. And out of those two choices, what's the right move?
Right.
If he's completely telling the truth, and that's the
thing where that's the thing, and that's the difference between Sylvie and Loki, is that one believes him completely and one doesn't at all. And
or unless it's revealed down the line,
right,
that maybe he duped them into this whole situation and wanted Sylvie to go ahead and do what she did. And you would do that.
And you would certainly, that's what I took from that last scene with him talking to her. Like, I'll see you soon. Like,
he seemed too jolly about that whole thing.
It was almost like, thank you.
Yes.
The way I took it as was, because he didn't want to do it anymore. It was kind of like he tried to give it to them. He wanted to pass the mantle. He didn't want to be there anymore. And the way I took it was, you know what? Because he said, either way, this works out for me, because either you take over and we have this one timeline, or you don't, and you see a whole bunch of nastier variants than me. And he says something like, I believe I'll be reborn. I'm always.
Yeah, he says he'll be reincarnated.
That's it. So I don't think that he was like gleeful because they were unleashing the multiverse. I think he genuinely wanted to keep the one universe, because he could have relinquished it at any time unless we learn something in the future. But based on the information we have now, there's nothing that shows that he was that he's a prisoner, he's bound. Based on the information we have now, I think that it's very likely that he was just, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm so old and I've seen everything, and I'll come back because I always come back. So, okay, I'll see you later. That's how I read it.
I think there's more to the story than that. He's told you his point of view, and Loki or Sylvie couldn't really do anything about it or disprove him at that point. So, and I think Tony, by his reaction right now, I can kind of say, I think we're in the same length where we kind of believe we're going to find out that there's more to this than what we know right now. But Jason, you're also right, though. With the information we have right now, I agree that Kang is correct. Krang is right then.
Loki says something to him. He says, "You're a liar, because why would you give up the greatest power in the universe?" Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him, and I'm like, he's right too. Like, why in the world? And his answer was not. His answer was, I'm old, I'm this, I'm that. I almost like Thanos. I'll retire to, to the garden. No, I think that this was his plan all along. I think that it was to get to two of them there and to convince them to go turn against each other, and then in turn kill him and reintroduce him as as the as the greatest, as release all of these different timelines, which is going to basically, as he said, reincarnate him. So, maybe he had grown weak, but this was the only way he knew to be reincarnated and get, become that, powerful person again. I don't think he had any intention of just turning it over to them. I think his whole plan all along was to get them to kill him.
Yeah, I don't think there was. Yeah, I agree, Tony. There was no turning over. It was going to happen. Something else was more to it, and I'm curious to see if we're going to see him in Doctor Strange at all, because I'm sure he'll pop up. We know for a fact he's in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Like that's 100% confirmed.
Right.
What wasn't? He's not in. Is he? Isn't he? Is No Way Home? He's not in No Way Home.
They haven't said anything, but they were also. They only announced. Marvel has only announced him to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They have not said he's in anything else. Yeah, I have a feeling he's going to be popping up either in post-credit scenes.
Yeah,
or
he's
going to
be the new Thanos. He's going to be the new Thanos. So.
And the beauty of it is it doesn't have to be the same Kang. Like we're not going to get this Kang in Quantumania. Yeah. We're going to get a variant Kang, and I think that's why this guy is so the Kang is such a good villain to really play around with now as our new Thanos, because it's not the same guy. It's variants of Kang.
Right.
And I have a wild theory. I don't think it's true, but I want to throw it out there. What if the way Doctor Doom is introduced is as a Kang variant? Different actor, like it would still be Victor Von Doom. It'll be a different actor. It'll be whoever they're going to get for Doom. But just as sort of like a nod to the fact that they are related, because Kang and Doom are distant relatives. So I think it might be like, it might be a fun little thing for fans. Like, okay, like if they worked it in that he's somehow a Kang variant. Again, I don't think it's true, but it was a thought that I was thinking like that might be fun.
It's not a bad one.
Like that.
Anything is possible, bro. Especially now that we know that he's confirmed, anything is possible. So
he also has ties to the Fantastic Four, by the way.
Yeah, and I think that there's any way that they bring the Fantastic Four in and they don't end up with Doctor Doom somewhere shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
All right. Well, then let's get to it. I'm pretty excited about this one too.
All right.
Our movie of the week is Black Widow, our first fresh, brand new MCU film that we're going to talk about here because one hasn't been released since this show started. So
since a year and a half before the show started.
So this is the first one. This is actually the first MCU film we're talking about. Period.
2019. That was the last MCU movie before this one.
Yeah.
So
I saw it with Ed in the theater.
Yes. So this is the first MCU film we're actually covering because we haven't talked about any of them just yet because we're saving it.
We're still delving in the multiverse.
We're still delving in the multiverse, and we will be delving more next week in something we'll get to at the end as we tease it. Are you though?
No, but you know why I get excited about movies like this.
I know.
It's not because I'm excited to watch it. I'm just excited to talk about bad movies. But let's go on.
Well, let's talk about something here. All right, so Black Widow. I got to see it on Screen X in Seattle last week at the first showing, which is 5:00 over there. It was like 5:30 or something like that. I got to see it on Screen X. If you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like a cube in a way, where you have the main screen in front of you, and on the sides, it kind of just like, let's just say you're looking into a forest, and there's scenes where they're running in this movie, and the forest is on the sides of it as well. So it kind of immerses you like you're in the scene a little bit more.
Three-dimensional almost.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you the truth. It was cool. Totally unnecessary. Don't need Screen X. IMAX, totally different story. I love IMAX, like the bigger screen, bigger sound, all of that. And I'm all in for that. Screen X, it was cool too. It's just check it out once, but didn't add anything for me to it. Wasn't worth the upcharge. But the film itself, though, overall thoughts, quick. I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. I like the vast majority of the MCU films on various levels. But Black Widow was solid, man. Black Widow was kind of what I guess I expected a Black Widow solo film to be. It was kind of like a James Bond sort of globe-trotting adventure. I always kind of envisioned that they would do an origin story for her, and that was going to be her thing, or maybe current day. I always pictured her maybe battling Hydra or some organization, but she does battle an organization in this It is kind of what it is. It's set. It just wasn't set in a time frame that I thought it would have always been set in. But I really dug it. I thought the action was really well choreographed. It looked great. ScarJo is awesome as always, and as Natasha Romanoff, she could play this in her sleep at this point. I think it added some depth to her character overall because, as if you're not familiar with it by now, I would assume that most are, that this movie is set between Civil War and Infinity War. So we get that time gap where, we kind of just alluded, the Avengers were on the run, or half of them were on the run, and that was kind of it. But we get to see what Natasha Romanoff was doing during that time. We're introduced to some new characters that I think really hit well. Yelena was phenomenal, who, we will see is probably, it looks like it was a passing of the torch, I felt too, for her to be the new Black Widow moving forward. David Harbour as Alexei. Hilarious. He was totally the comic relief. Thought he was great. So many moments. Yes, Red Guardian was absolutely great.
My favorite part about this movie was Red Guardian. I like this movie a lot, but my favorite part was Red Guardian from start to finish. Not from the past, but from the second you see him arm wrestling guys in the Russian prison while he's getting back tattoos. He was my favorite character, and he never ever disappoints after that moment. He's wonderful.
Yeah, David Harbour as the comedy relief as Red Guardian was great. Is it Dimitri that I'm saying? Is it no?
Was it Dimitri?
No, the villain. The main villain.
Ray Winstone is the actor's name.
Yes, I was going to say Mr. French. Mr. French from the party.
Mr. French.
Absolutely the villain.
That's the minute the first scene that he showed up, I was like, oh my God, it's Mr. French. I love it.
Yeah. I was like, I thought I was telling Jason, I was like, is that Mr. French? I was like, holy shit, that's fucking Mr. French. I was like, unreliable. That's what I was first thinking. Is it Dimitri? Is his name? Is the character's name in this? That's running the Red Room?
I'm going to check.
It starts with a D.
So. I'm going to check now.
Yeah. He was really good in it, but you don't see him that much. The Taskmaster is in this movie, changed pretty much from the comics accurate thing. Didn't mind it though. I know some people were flipping out about that.
Dreykov.
I knew it started with a D. So Mr. French as Dreykov was awesome. He's not in it that much, but the scenes he's in, I think he's really good in that. And the Taskmaster stuff, for me, it worked for the story. I thought it was fine. It was a twist that I didn't see coming, but I was cool with it. I rolled it. As the Taskmaster, though, I thought very imposing. The scenes where it felt like the Terminator in a way was kind of like chasing down and stuff. You kind of felt the presence, and that's kind of what I needed from it. And I thought that was cool. So it worked for me on a lot of levels. I really dug it, man. Is it like a top 5 MCU film? I don't think so, but I would say it's probably middle of the pack, upper to the upper echelon. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not always going to get a top 5 MCU film. Like that's impossible at this point.
No, that's impossible. And the fact is, what we should expect is a fun movie with interesting action, interesting character stuff, and characters that we like. And I think we get that here. Like, I like this movie a lot. I love Red Guardian. I think he was my favorite part. Like, I saw this. So I saw this with Ed. This is the first movie I have seen since the pandemic started. Like the last movie I saw was in February on Valentine's Day, literally a week before my son was born, literally a month before the pandemic hit, and it was Fantasy Island. Because my wife loves Blumhouse and she loves stupid horror, and she just loves horror, not just stupid horror. And I was like, well, Blumhouse and Fantasy Island, I'm curious. And so that was what she wanted to do for Valentine's Day when she was pregnant. What am I going to do? I'm going to say no, I did. Yeah. But that was the last movie I saw. So seeing this in the IMAX with Ed, like the old times, like before the pandemic, it was so nice. And there was a lot to like about this. As I said, Red Guardian's great. I think the setting up Natasha Romanoff's family and having it being this sort of implanted family where they're pretending And I think that's a great parallel to how she feels in the Avengers, right?
Yeah.
Because they keep making this parallel, like the Avengers are my family, but you're not. But then you are, and the Avengers are fighting. And I think that's what this movie is working out. It's working out Black Widow's family and who her family is. And I think we see a lot of interesting Black Widow things that really define her character in other movies, which is, and you know, Ed, you and I were quoting this for the longest time, you know, what is it, by any means necessary, right? Or whatever it takes. That's it, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes,
and
yeah.
We see that, like, that is who this character is. And I think we really see that in this movie, because there are so many times where what she has to do is something that, like in the end, so, you know, because we're just jumping around, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're not
her
doing
ending, when she fights with Dreykov, the whole ending scene is a homage to her first scene in Avengers, where she is doing something, making it look like she is in peril to get information from the villain when she really has the upper hand. And the way she has the upper hand is, well, he has this pheromone that if she smells it, she can't attack him, and she knows that. So what's her plan? She's going to break her nose so she can't smell. And she goads him into beating her up, and goes, that's not enough. So now I got to do this. He's like, what are you going to do? And she cracks her nose on the desk. And I think that right there shows who Natasha Romanoff is throughout all of the MCU. Whatever it takes, you do it. You know, and I think that the fact that you see this and it pays off so well in Endgame now, that, I mean, pays off. This takes place before Endgame, but it's made after, but we all know how that is. But again, there's just so much good stuff here. Dreykov is brilliant. I really like that actor. I really liked his plan. I like that they bring it back to the Red Room, and it's sort of like she has unfinished business in her origin. It's not an origin story, but we get the origin story, and there's unfinished business in the origin story. And I thought that was a really clever take on it. I think the only thing that I would say that I wasn't crazy about is the Taskmaster stuff. I agree that Taskmaster, when she's on screen, is great and menacing. I wanted to see more Taskmaster throughout, and you know, the twist was spoiling the twist. So spoilers, if you haven't seen this, don't, shut this off now.
We have it on the bottom.
The twist is that the Taskmaster is Dreykov's daughter, who was injured in the explosion that Natasha Romanoff set to kill Dreykov so she could defect to S.H.I.E.L.D. And it didn't kill either of them, and he trained her to become his assassin. And whereas I think that's super interesting that because this guy obviously hates women. I mean, that's part of the character. He actually, you could see it. That's why he chooses women. That's why. But to enslave your own daughter, I think it's really nasty, and I think it's a very interesting choice. But I felt that for the Taskmaster, this was kind of like a Mandarin light for me. Not as big as the Mandarin, where I'm going, oh no, bait and switch, I can't stand this movie, but more of like, okay, I can overlook this, but that's not really who the Taskmaster is. Like, I would have rathered it have been an original character and not the Taskmaster, or been a more accurate Taskmaster. But the splitting the difference for me, not a big deal. I still really like the movie, but it was a problem I had while I was thinking about my thoughts of the movie, collecting them to talk about.
Okay. Tony?
I agree with about 99.9% of what you guys said. The movie was awesome. I thought that the action was fantastic. Just everything that I would expect from a movie, led by Natasha Romanoff. I really love the new characters that they introduced. I love Yelena. I think that Yelena was fantastic. I thought that this was an excellent introduction for her. Not only did you get to see what she's capable of, that she is capable of being Black Widow. You saw the way that she handled herself in the fight with Natasha in the beginning. And, as you see what she did going on, through the film, and just her snarky kind of attitude, and like she's just she not only is she doing her thing and whatever, and she has her I don't need you kind of an attitude, but yet she's she's like she's needling her as things go on, like with the whole flipping of the hair thing, which I thought was just absolutely beautifully done. hysterical. She's great, and I'm really looking forward to her, picking that mantle up of Black Widow, because she's going to be great in that role, and she's a young girl too. I think she's only 25 years old, so it's really it's a good role for her, and I enjoy it. I didn't realize it was the girl from Fighting with My Family, who she played Paige in that movie. I don't know if you guys are.
I didn't know that. I've heard of it,
but yeah, no. If you haven't seen it, you should really see it. The movie is great. I watched it. The Rock makes an appearance in it, but it's really good.
You had me at The Rock.
Yeah. Oh no, he's actually, it's his company that produced it actually. So he's one of the executive producers on it. But she plays Paige, and she was great in that movie, and she was great in this one. And she's a young girl, and I'm excited the fact that we're going to get more of her throughout the years coming up. I cannot say enough about David Harbour. He was unbelievable in this. He was so great in this role. I mean, the comic relief, the different things he was saying, that goofy smile, like everything about it. It was just, he was phenomenal. He goes in there, he goes, I go talk to her, and he goes in there, and she's laying it all out for him. She called him the Crimson whatever the fuck, and he's like,
Crimson Dynamo.
The Crimson Dynamo.
Which is a villain.
Yeah, I know.
Which is a villain, and what's really funny is I kept in my head calling him the Crimson Dynamo and going, no, it's Red Guardian, no, it's Red Guardian. So when she said it, I was like, oh, they fucking knew. The MCU knew that we would mix these two up.
Well, and then, under his breath, he's like, it's Red Guardian.
Red Guardian, yeah.
So great. And then, like when he stands up, he's like, he pulls the needle out, he's like, did I really think? And then like, boom, boom.
Jason, say it.
When he sees Romanoff for the first time, when he sees Black Widow for the first time, and his first question is, so does he talk about me?
Yeah.
Who? Yes. Captain America. Does he talk about me?
Does he talk about our, we're like
our great rivalry?
Yes.
Oh my God.
She calls him out and she's like, I haven't seen you in 10, 15 years. It's the first thing you ask me about.
And the guy, the prisoner that calls him out, was like, wait, Captain America was still frozen at that point. Yeah. And he was like, where?
Crack.
Oh my God. He was so great. He was so great. So I truly enjoyed. And Rachel Weisz was fantastic as well. I mean, she had some great one-liners also, deadpan stuff. I'm clearly injured.
The thing with the pig was funny.
The thing with the pig, that was crazy, wasn't that?
Right?
Yeah.
So I thought the casting was great. I thought the acting was great. The action was really good. And the story, I thought the story was really good. I thought that if you're going to do this and you're going to make it a standalone movie, it had to be about her life. And what was she doing? She did plenty of stuff. I thought maybe they would go through. I know that they mentioned Budapest a bunch of different times, and that was, the Budapest. Stuff with
Budapest.
Oh yeah, Budapest that she kept saying, right? Right. But they kept saying, they kept going back to that, and she mentioned the fact that her and Barton had been up in that air duct for like 2 days, and you could see they were playing tic-tac-toe and stuff like that. They really do such a great job of making callbacks to different things that they've done. But all of that I thought was really good. I thought going to the Red Room, that was a good storyline, bringing it down. So that's all the stuff that I really enjoyed about the film. I will agree with you that I thought the Taskmaster stuff was not great. I thought that this is a really good villain that you just basically destroyed, because you can never bring him back now. This is, you had it. It was in the story. Now she's freed. That's it. Taskmaster's done. And I feel like this is something that they could have maybe kind of kept going. Maybe have them meet up at another point, because the fight scenes between the two of them were really good. And it's a good villain not to shoot your load in the one and only film that it's in. And we had thought after Iron Man 2 that they had done that with the Mandarin. Like, how could you do this? But obviously they've righted that ship. But this this is in my opinion, the only major problem with this movie is that I feel like they took a good villain, a really good villain, a solid villain, and they destroyed it in just the one film. So that much of it, I that's the one thing I probably could say that I wasn't thrilled with. But overall, I thought the movie was great. It was very entertaining. It's everything that you want in a Marvel movie. It's loud. It's explosions. It's great CGI. The acting is good. The casting. It was really really well done. It was worth the wait.
Yeah, and I would say that there's one regarding the story. I think they touched on a big thing that I thought was pretty. It added a lot of depth and power to the story. I think when they did touch on essentially child trafficking. Yes. I mean, that's literally what they touched on, and that's what he's doing with the widows and bringing them in, because they do show that it's not just like, it's just Russian women. It's women from everywhere. Anyone who's like, he preys on young girls that don't have anyone to protect them or anything like that are just kind of out there and exposed.
Right.
And he brings them in and turns them into his widow. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And also a lot of, Natasha's trauma from it and Yelena's trauma that they had to deal with after getting free from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a pretty deep thing for the MCU to cover and to tackle on that. So I thought that was that's a pretty kudos to them for doing that.
There's a really cool through line too, that if you notice, everyone in the family avoids asking or looking for the others once they all break free, right? So you have Natasha and her sister, I forget the woman's name,
Yelena.
Terrible with names, Yelena, and Yelena calls her out. You never looked for me. Well, I thought you were fine, So that's Natasha. And then when they go and they meet up with the mother, Melina's like, I just, this is what I do. I've been to the Red Room 4 times before you were born. I don't know what else to do. And Yelena's like, yeah, well, the serum and the thing that you were testing, who you were controlling was me. And she was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And there's so many instances of this family, which does, feel like they do feel familial to each other. That's made very clear throughout the story. Even even Red Crimson, Red
Guardian,
whatever, you know what I mean. Thank you. Even Red Guardian, who is the one who's like, I just want to be in the spotlight. Even he has moments where he's like, no, it actually really did love you girls. I did the best I could, and there were some wonderful moments where he's like, look, I was offered greater purpose, and I tried to give it to you, and so it's even like, I just didn't know how to be a good dad to you. And there's some really interesting stuff, family dynamics wise, and about once they break away from that trauma, because they're all traumatized, all 4 of them. Yeah. Once they break away from it, they avoid each other until they're forced back into this movie. And I think that's really interesting that they keep calling that out, because it almost becomes like an allegory for traumatized families coming back together after an event. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how far Marvel was trying to do that, but it's definitely the schematics of that are definitely there with certain choices they make.
Absolutely. And there's also, if you look at it, this is, the way the Russians were, during that time period and, in the 80s and the 90s or whatever, they followed what the government told them, that was, so they were all under the impression, and this is a country that is famous, and, infamous for lying to other countries and their own people. So, yes, I would believe that people who work for the government say, oh, you're going to be doing this, you're doing it for this reason, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, that's not anything near what it really is for. And so that's why, Melina says she has no idea that that's what was being done. I was told it was for this. Yeah, and, right. And that's why, Alexei allowed the girls to go, because he thought that he was doing right by them, and that he was going to move on to do what he was meant to do. Meanwhile, he was thrown in prison. The girls went to the Red Room, and then, and Melania went back to doing what she was doing, which was helping design and control these girls. So, it's a really well portrayed, of the time and the mindset of the Russian culture at that point, which was just trust the government because they don't lie to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're all points. So I guess before we wrap up the discussion regarding Black Widow, let's talk about this post-credit scene, because it's a Marvel movie and of course it's a post-credit scene. So in the post-credit scene, we see Yelena visiting Natasha's grave, and we see that Natasha got her grave, and it was in Ohio. You can see that they probably found out, more of the Avengers found out more about her, so they gave her grave site there. So Yelena finds it out, and then we get Val showing up, and pretty much. And also, by the way, there was also a heartbreaking moment in there when she does the whistle when she goes to the grave. And she does that whole thing, which I was like, "Wow, that really hit home." And there are some sad moments in this film. Angie actually admitted she teared up a couple of times. So I was like, "Wow, that's that's something." Yeah,
I could definitely see that. There's real emotion in this movie. I think that's why it works.
Yeah, there is. It works in ways that you probably didn't think you were gonna get going into the movie, which I think is awesome. It's a pleasant surprise. But in the post-credit scene, Val shows up, who we met in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Now, initially, Black Widow was supposed to come out a year ago, and this was supposed to be her introduction. And then we find out, though, that Yelena is on vacation, and she's working for Val at that point, because that's definitely, they do say that. And then Val goes ahead and takes this opportunity to say, oh, well, here's your next target. And it's going to give you the person responsible for Natasha's death, and then shows her a picture, and we find out it's fucking Clint Barton. And that's like, holy shit. So obviously, the assumption is that that's what they're setting up for the Hawkeye series that we're supposed to be getting later this year.
Which he's now confirmed to be in.
Yeah, I know. I know there was a lot of talk that she was going to be in it. I was more thinking in terms that she was going to be somebody who was going to be on his side, which then may or may not. She might not be the main villain chasing him throughout that. I personally could kind of see this where she's hunting down Clint for most of this, and then they team up or some shit like that before the end of it. Something like that. I don't think she's going to be the ultimate villain in it, but it does confirm, like Tony said, that she's going to be in Hawkeye. That's going to be her thing. That's her mission now. And obviously, I'm sure Val probably twisted the story a bit, and then it isn't kind of like, oh yeah, they were on Vormir and sacrifice of the Soul Stone. There's probably some crazy off the wall shit that she did to push her in the right direction.
Right.
Here's a question I have.
Go ahead.
Do you think? I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt, but do you think that Yelena was snapped away in the blip and comes back? Because I think that would make it really interesting for why Black Widow was so focused on getting everyone back in Endgame, right? Outside of our regular reasons, but also why Yelena would be so hyped to get the person who did this, because they never had that moment again if she was blipped, right? So that was a thought I was having. I'm curious what you guys think about it.
That's really interesting. I honestly did not cross my mind at all. I mean, I think that would be something to add to it.
I had the thought of, so when after that whole thing happened, they fast forward to to go in there. That was literally the first thing that came to my mind, because I sat there and I'm like, well, where was Yelena during this whole thing?
Right.
She had to have been blipped, because when Scarlett Johansson, when Natasha is talking to Steve, and she's in Avengers headquarters, and she's running SHIELD, she's running the Avengers at that point, and you could just tell she's heartbroken. There's no, she's lost just about everybody. It's just these couple of people who are left in her lives, and she kept saying the word family. I got this family, and this is probably coming right off of, everything that happened in Infinity War is coming right off of the fact that when they were together, and you'll remember in the Infinity War, she was actually wearing the vest that Yelena had given to her.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's why they went to great pains to show you that she gave her that vest, which I also thought was such a great moment. Her talking about, I've never owned a piece of clothing before.
Yeah, it's like, it's so cool.
I want to be able. Yep, it has so many pockets, and it was a running joke throughout the. That's why I'm saying, like, her sense of humor during this movie was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like she kept saying this and that or whatever. But I did have that thought that she must have been blipped, and I agree with you 1,000%. I guarantee you that she was.
Good catch, Jason. I honestly didn't. I gotta admit that did not cross my mind. I agree with you guys. I think she definitely was blipped. I mean, seems like everything connects to it, so they'll probably acknowledge it officially in Hawkeye. Yeah,
right.
To say that,
sure that's
some conversation. Yeah. So I think the big thing too is that now that we've seen Val, she has Yelena working for her. She now has that. Either way, whichever way you want to say, I guess this technically they're saying this may have happened. The scene maybe now comes after she has U.S. agent, but we know it was supposed to be before. It doesn't really matter. What's one or the other?
Yeah, I don't think it matters at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So she has U.S. agent now. She has a Black Widow. The question is she setting up recruiting a team of the Dark Avengers? Because in the comics it was alternate versions playing the parts of the Avengers, or is she putting together a Thunderbolts team of pretty much anti-heroes and stuff like that to form her own? Like she's forming some team of some sort, whether it's called the Avengers or they won't outwardly call them the Dark Avengers, but maybe the New Avengers or something like that, or the Thunderbolts. Do you guys agree that she's probably setting up some team? We're going to see her pop in here and there, trying to recruit various random heroes or former heroes?
Absolutely.
No, there's no question. I mean,
absolutely.
I think we kind of knew that just by when she gave U.S. Agent his title, and when she picked up John Walker, to see her show up here. Yeah, she's obviously got Yelena working for her, but I think that once the Hawkeye series, and she realizes, I guess, that she's got to know the story already. I mean, I'm sure that the story has come out, after everything that happened in Endgame, about Natasha. So, you saw all the candles and things and whatever that were left there for her. So people obviously went to see her grave and paid respects and whatnot or whatever. But I'm assuming that they released the story of what happened on Vormir and how she sacrificed herself to get the stone. So, like you said, Valentina probably twisted the story or so on and so forth, but she's going to end up, whether it leads to Clint's demise or retirement or whatever the case is, I have the feeling that she will eventually find the right story out, and she will eventually, become one of the actual Avengers and not on her team. But you definitely see that she's out there recruiting. That's for sure. There's no question about that.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I think Yelena will end up being the Black Widow eventually.
Yep.
And I definitely think she's recruiting because they're featuring her like Phase 1 featured Sam Jackson. You show up here and there. I'm going to give you an offer. You're going to do this for me, and that led to the Avengers. And I think that's kind of what they're doing. So whether they're doing the Thunderbolts or the Dark Avengers, and I don't think it matters which one they're doing, because they're not going to do Dark Avengers like the comic. They're not going to do Thunderbolts like the comic. It's going to be a team of people who are like the Avengers, but either anti-heroes or a bit different or whatever way they go for it. I think she's definitely building a sort of anti-hero team or a mirror image team of the Avengers. And I think that, again, that's expressed with how they're using this character, Valentina, much like they used Sam Jackson.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there it is. Our first MCU film in the bag. It feels nice to finally get around to that.
Good stuff.
Yes, it does. It very much does.
So, and also Jason's back in the theaters. I know Tony, this wasn't your first film back in the theaters, right?
It was.
It was. Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
This was my first movie since The Rise of Skywalker.
Wow.
Ooh,
I had
sorry.
the bad. Exactly. Thank you. I had the bad taste in my mouth.
I'd rather have Fantasy Island be my last one.
I would rather almost anything other than what I saw. Just about anything.
Wow, that is a low blow, Jason. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible.
I have a love-hate relationship with new Star Wars.
I'm not going to go as far as that. I think you guys have gone over the top with that.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm going to think of a bunch of shit movies that I would rather, and then I think Rise of Skywalker is better than some we've even talked about on this fucking show. That's what I'll go for.
Look. All right,
that's like crazy now. Okay.
Look, am I choosing Howard the Duck over Rise of Skywalker? No, but let's be serious now. Okay, Rise of Skywalker. If you're gonna take a year and a half absence from going to a movie theater, The Rise of Skywalker would not be the movie you would choose to be the last one you saw for that year and a half.
That's fair.
If you have to choose, then obviously, yeah, you want to go out on a real fucking high note.
Well, because I wanted to go see Bad Boys for Life in January of 2020, but I never got there, and then all of this shit happened, and I was out of the theater for as long as I was. So this was a good reintroduction back into going on opening night, which is great. I got to go to IMAX, the Westbury IMAX theater, which is very nice IMAX. And it was great. I loved being back in the theater. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I agree, man. It was so good. I got popcorn and a hot dog and soda, and I sat there and I just lost myself in a movie. I missed it so much.
I did too. I really did. I never realized how much I missed it, but I really, really missed it.
And we'll be doing this again soon because we already got Jason and I. Jason will be joining me and Angie to go see Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins, which we will be covering on the show. Mm-hmm. So we got that going. And the Suicide Squad.
Yes, I went ahead and very
snatched up tickets for that. Yeah. So
they're going to
be coming out every week, man. They're going to be churning them out every week soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to be away for Suicide Squad, so I'm going to have to watch it on HBO Max first and then go check it out in the theater after the fact. So thank God that HBO made the colossal mistake of releasing all of their films this year on both in the theater and on HBO Max. So I'm really looking forward to that. And they have some great. I mean, if you think about it, you have Suicide Squad in August. You have The Many Saints of Newark, which is the Sopranos prequel movie that comes out in October. Ghostbusters Afterlife comes out in November. It's gonna be a party, bro. Like it's gonna be a party with HBO Max over the next couple of months.
Yeah, so now we're gonna be covering a lot of all these, all the comic book related ones. We will be covering here on Granny's PC. So yeah, our next movie for next week is Blade Trinity. It will be Blade Trinity because we need to wrap up the Blade trilogy.
With
the bad one. So we'll be talking about that next week on next week's episode, next Wednesday night. So thanks for joining us tonight. We always appreciate all the support. If you like what you heard here, go ahead. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and join our Facebook group. It's called Granny's Peach Tea. And join Pop Culture Pros. We're here. We're always posting and promoting whenever we're going to come on next. So keep checking us out. If you're into wrestling, you can check on Tuesdays. You got Eric and Tim who do the Just Too Sweet show. They're going to have that rolling. Actually, me and Lisa will be back with another episode of the Empire 161 show. We'll be doing that, nice. I believe, is 6 o'clock. 5:30 or 6 o'clock on Friday. We'll promote that and get that out there. So if you like the Yankees, you can come check us out. If you're into the Mets, you can check out Faraci and the gang on the Put It in the Book show for newer movies. I'm not sure if they're doing Black Widow or not, but Jada and Kyle cover old movies, new movies. You can go ahead and check them out. And Eric has his own solo show called the A to Z Show, which is usually on Sunday nights, and he covers everything from A to Z. You never know what he's going to be talking about. So it's a lot of fun, so check him out. And then you got Stream Wars Pros, which I'm pretty sure they're doing an episode soon, where they go ahead and they all pick different streaming services and they talk about all of that stuff. So I'm sure they'll probably be touching on Loki a little bit and What If and all the other stuff. So it's a lot of fun on Pop Culture Pros. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go to Pop Culture Pros, click on subscribe. You can watch our show, watch all the other shows that we just mentioned. Instagram, go ahead, follow it. That's where you can find us every week. And that's that. So everyone stay safe, enjoy the week. Check out Black Widow, as we're recommending to everybody. 2 thumbs up here. Whenever you check this out, check out Loki. Come back to our page, give us feedback for that. And we'll see you guys next week, all right? Peace.
All right. Peace.